Hey everybody, it's Matt Shares. Welcome to the SBI podcast. My guest today is Tracy Eiler, the CMO for InsideView. Tracy and I have a fascinating conversation about the impact of marketing and customer success to driving revenue. I hope you enjoyed the show.
From SBI's Executive Briefing Center in Dallas, Texas, the most watched and listened to content in B2B sales and marketing, it's the SBI podcast with your host, Matt Shares.
Welcome to the SBI podcast, a weekly show dedicated to helping you make your number. Today, we're going to demonstrate how marketing supports customer success to grow revenue by retaining and growing customers proactively throughout the customer lifecycle. So why this topic, and specifically customer success? So you think about business models and the changes that they're going through, from transaction-based revenue to subscription-based revenue models. Companies that are dependent on recurring revenue must pay special attention to customer renewal rates, revenue retention, and customer lifetime value. So as a result, reactive customer service approaches built to lower the cost to serve are being replaced with proactive customer success approaches built to increase the revenue per customer. So when your customer becomes more successful as a result of using your product, they're going to buy more of it. When they're unaware of how you've contributed to their success, they're going to attrit and off they go. My name is Matt Shares. I'm the CEO of SBI, and I'm also your host. Joining me in the studio, as always, is my beloved co-host, Melissa Valdez. Hi, Melissa.
Thank you, Matt, and welcome to our audience.
So Melissa's here to point you to some key resources along the way. I'm really excited about today's show because joining us is what I would like to say is a CMO of superstardom, which is Tracy Eiler from InsideView. So Tracy, welcome to the show, and please introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Matt and Melissa, and hello to all your listeners. I am the CMO at InsideView. I'm a lifetime B2B marketer. And in fact, my very first job, which is a little known fact, when I was 16 years old, I was a sales development rep at a software company. And every single one of us went by the pseudonym Chris Kelly because it was gender neutral. And this particular software company ran a lot of ads, and they would say, call 1-800-XYZ and ask for Chris. So we would answer the phones, we would talk to the leads, and we would enter everything into this homegrown marketing automation system that was built on Fortran. So that's how I started my career. And ever since then, I have been doing B2B marketing, and with a focus on really brand and demand is really my DNA.
Awesome. And Tracy, so the audience can understand, can you talk a little bit about what InsideView does and your role at InsideView?
Absolutely. We are a B2B software company, and we help sales and marketing people find their very best target accounts and approach them in a relevant way. We have a number of products, and we sell both to small businesses and large enterprises. And I run all of marketing at InsideView. I'm the CMO. I've been there nearly 3 years. And I would say that, the big focus now is what marketing's role is in the overall customer lifecycle, not just that original acquisition part, which so many of us marketers were trained to obsess over.
Right. And I think I have two fun facts on you, one that is serious and one that's a little less serious. So I know you have just completed a book and that it is flying. It's flying off the digital shelves, if you will. So why don't you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. It's called Align to Achieve: How to Unite Your Sales and Marketing Teams into a Single Force for Growth. Wiley released it last October, so it's been in the market for a year. It's already sold 10,000 copies, which honestly I never thought would happen in a million years. Yeah. And I'm pretty excited about it. I co-authored it with my colleague who runs enterprise sales at InsideView, Andrea Austin. And she and I just had some fabulous experiences working together, unlike ones we had ever had before, because we all know the tension that exists between sales and marketing. And we decided to write about it.
So the fact that you could write a book with your sales leader, people talk about interlock between sales and marketing. You all have taken it to a new level. So first off, compliments. As our firm has written many books, I know the level of effort it takes to get that out the door. So my compliments on the vision to do it and obviously the tremendous success. So well done. Another fun fact about you in the University of Michigan that Melissa shared with me. Melissa, what was that fact that we learned about Tracy?
Yes, this is just fascinating and awesome all at the same time. So Tracy was the house manager for the Tri-Delt sorority at the University of Michigan. And she was voted most feared her senior year.
Oh my.
Yeah.
So Tracy, all I ask as a hockey player who's on his third set of teeth, you are feared. You don't look very fearful right now, but I promise I will color within the lines. I won't do anything wrong on the interview. I do not want to make you mad.
Tracy, I like to say my bite is worse than my bark, so there you go. You can share that philosophy.
I might look like a professional person, but yeah, I can talk trash if necessary.
I love it.
Oh, girl, I love it.
I love it. All right, so Melissa, the audience might want to follow along with what Tracy and I chat about. So can you point them to a resource that they can follow along as she and I have our conversation?
Yes, absolutely. If you have your How to Make Your Number workbook handy for 2018, turn to the Customer Success section on page 411. If you don't have your workbook handy, please go to sbi.com/2018 workbook and get your copy right now.
All right, so let's jump into the questions. So it's exciting to see customer success develop as a formal discipline, and it's one of these terms that people hear a lot. So Tracy, as a CMO, and you've been in technology for a long time, so you've seen this evolve, what's your view of customer success?
You know, it might help for me to show a picture. I'm going to share my screen real fast for your audience, because I think that what's really driving the need for marketing to obsess about customer success is the new revenue model that you talked about, Matt, in your intro.
Right.
And we've all grown up with the traditional marketing funnel that literally looks like a funnel with awareness at the top and closing business at the bottom. I'm going to argue, and I talk about this in my book, that there really is a new funnel that looks like the picture on the screen, this sideways 8 or ellipses, where companies, we find our ideal customer, we engage with them, we close that business, and then we grow that business, and it's a virtuous cycle that goes on. And us marketers traditionally have not thought about our businesses that way. On this next slide, we've traditionally thought about our businesses as being new logo acquisition, and 80% of our time has been spent there. And I think most of the marketers that are listening, and probably their colleagues that are CEOs, are probably saying, yeah, that's what we typically obsess about, and that's what we are trying to do, is attract new business. But I'm going to argue that over the lifetime value of a customer, marketing strategies need to evolve into customer adoption. And that's where that success really comes in, making sure your customer gets to best practice as quickly as possible. And then you earn the right to upsell them, and you earn the right to turn them into an advocate. And then that virtuous cycle continues. So, that's what I think is really, really critical for marketers to be thinking about.
Right.
And that's what's driving my perspective on this topic.
So then, knowing that and this continuous loop, right? If you think about everybody obsessing about client lifecycle management or customer, like the entire customer lifecycle, it's no longer horizontal, it's this continuous loop. When you look at customer success and you're chatting, and we're chatting to a group of CMOs right now that are listening to this, what do you think about from a reporting and structure standpoint for that organization from your lens as a marketer?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And just 2 weeks ago, I was in Austin, not too far from where you are in the studio, for Forrester's B2B Marketing and Sales Enablement Summit.
Yep.
And this topic that we're discussing right now was the topic of the event, and the reporting issue came up. And Forrester's predicting within the next 3 to 5 years that we're going to see the traditional customer success organization, which typically, especially in a SaaS business or cloud subscription business, is its own unit that runs parallel marketing and parallel sales, or sometimes reports into sales, is going to start to become part of the marketer's responsibility. And one of the things I think is really interesting is what's driving this, I think, Matt, is the consumerization, to use that air quotes, consumerization of the B2B buyer.
Yeah.
We are acting in B2B like we act in our personal lives with our consumer purchases, and we're coming to expect the same kind of experience from our business purchases as we do at home.
Yeah.
When we're buying a pair of shoes, or the other night I was buying a calculator for my son to take the PSAT on Amazon, right?
Yep.
And I'm, that whole experience that I was going through is what I expect to happen in my business world.
Yep.
Marketers in consumer world are responsible for customer success, and that whole journey, it's starting to happen in B2B as well.
So then if you think about the interlock between customer success and marketing, and using your visual, right, where you're not trying to put these folks together and it's this really uncomfortable collision as opposed to it's this integrated loop, are there a couple of key areas that you see for those that are listening to say, hey, if you're starting to implement customer success and you're wondering what marketing should be doing and what its role is, think about these 2 or 3 things to kind of get you on the 101, 201 plan, if you will.
I do. The very first thing would be what consultants would often call a journey map.
Yep.
Map the journey of your customer, and it's really marketing's job to do that.
Yep.
And I like to refer to that as secret shopping. It's a very simple concept, but just think about everything that happens to that buyer from the minute they become aware to the minute they become a customer to what happens while they are adopting your product and over time as they are getting value out of that product. Mapping it simply means examine it, write it all down, and figure out where the gaps are. And in fact, in my company at InsideView, we just finished doing a very detailed journey map earlier this year. We had a really great one when we had one product, but now we have multiple products. And so we redid our journey map when we are selling multiple products because we have lots of different personas involved now. And we found some scary gaps, I have to admit. Where, the handoff between marketing to sales was pretty tight, but then from sales to customer success, there were some things dropping. Support tickets weren't integrated the way they should be, and so on. So journey mapping would be the place I would start.
Very good. So, Tracy, before we take a break, talk a little bit more about multiple products, multiple personas. And if you think about customer success, and a lot of people struggle, they're like, well, we have customer care. We'll just move customer care to customer success. You and I both know that is the wrong way to think about it. It's a completely different motion. But relative to having multiple journey maps, multiple products, and marketing trying to think about what's my role in the customer success, and that sort of land, adopt, expand, renew as we think about the classic motion. Anything you can share with the audience as they think about multiple products, multiple personas, sort of in that same 101, 201 structure that you just laid out?
Yeah, I would first say that, we all know that purchases are happening in buying groups today.
Yep.
And I think it's CEB that a couple of years ago, the number was like 5.4 people on average were involved in a buying group. Now the new number is like 6.8. I know in our business, there's as many as 34 people involved in a deal. And we know that, there might be 4 to 5 or 6 that are part of the purchase process, but there's a bunch of other ones that are becoming aware and are recommending. Many of those are millennials, which is a whole nother path of discussion, to bring up because that's changing dynamic about how people want to interact online. But what marketing has to do is really think about that buying group, and there are often multiple personas across a company, some that are going to be known to you and some that won't be known to you. It just depends on whether they're anonymous or not as they're coming to your website and so on. Getting a handle on that buying group, making sure you're coordinating with sales, which is something that we really talk about in the book, through that buying cycle. And then making sure that you're looking at the customer's adoption of that new product or service or multiple products, that you're looking at their adoption as a investment in their success, and getting that customer to a best practice use of your product really requires a lot of care and attention. And marketing has a role to play not only in the messaging, the techniques of conversation, the self-service availability that we can do over the web and other tools. And there's lots of great products that can help us. We happen to be a Gainsight customer. We're an Influitive customer. We use Gainsight for customer success. We use Influitive for our advocacy community. And marketing's role in kind of streamlining all of that and making sure that the customer's experience, that their experience with your brand from the time they become aware all the way through them getting to best practice is consistent.
Yes.
And many times it's not.
We're big, Gainsight's actually a client. We're big fans of Nick and the team. So wonderful. All right, so Tracy and I are going to take a quick break. And while we do that, Melissa has something to share that we think the audience can leverage. So
Yes,
Melissa?
Absolutely. Did you just receive your revenue target for the year and you're waking up in the middle of the night sweating, wondering how you're going to make your number this year? Well, we have something special for you. We developed an online self-assessment that you can take. It takes about 20 minutes and it measures your go-to-market strategy against the emerging best practices of market leaders in the industry. To access this fantastic tool, you'll go to sbi.tips/revenue growth diagnostic.
Wonderful. Thanks, Melissa. So you're listening to the SBI podcast. I'm your host, Matt Shares, and today's guest is Tracy Eiler, the CMO for InsideView. So today, Tracy and I are demonstrating how marketing supports customer success. So we're going to jump back into the questions here in our next segment. So Tracy, we sort of talked about the construct, getting the basics of the journey map, some of those interlock elements in the first phase. I thought maybe this phase we could spend some time talking about the ongoing support. So from your view, how does marketing support customer success?
The very first way is in targeting the right customer in the first place, which is very early on in the cycle. I have one more picture that I want to share with your audience, which shows some work that I did last year with my finance team. And this is honestly, Matt, one of the most interesting projects I have worked on in a very long time. We took every one of our customers and we put them on a map of renewal rate across the horizontal axis and retention rate on the vertical axes. And this is real data. I've anonymized it a little bit across industries, but we said, okay, we're a 10 plus year old company. We've got thousands of customers. Where's our best revenue coming from? And, obviously the upper right is where we want to be, but guess what? We have a lot of customers in that lower left quadrant. And, going back to that discussion we had at the very beginning of this conversation, where marketers have traditionally spent most of their time on new logo acquisition. At the time that we brought in these customers, marketing was heroes, sales got their commission. We all patted ourselves on the back and said, good for us, we beat our numbers. But a year later, those customers in the lower left either churned or didn't buy anymore. But they cost us exactly what the customers in the upper right cost us. So to bring it. So we have to start by focusing on the right targets. So marketing really has to drive that process of identifying your ICP, figuring out what the right accounts are, and then going after those accounts. Because at the very beginning, customer success is not going to be successful if you're not targeting the right kinds of accounts. They're sort of, if it's not the right fit, if it's not the right business need match, and so on, those customers are going to churn anyway, and you're going to beat your head against the wall. So targeting the right customers at the very beginning is really critical. I think the very next thing is marketing can really work collaboratively with customer success on communicating the business value and, kind of our unique value proposition to that customer, drawing out of that customer what it is that they're really trying to solve. And this is all that classic kind of solution selling motions and so on. But making sure that your customer success people have in their brains that they're there to deliver business value, not just hook up a product.
Right. That was very good and a great visual. So that sort of leads me to a next question. What does customer success do to inform marketing about buyer trends? And then marketing taking that input. So if you kind of think about the loop, go in reverse order. How do you think about that from your seat as a CMO?
Customer success has a critical role to play with feedback back into marketing. And that's everything from what is the customer's experience with the product? Where are they tripping up? That, of course, will go back even into the product team in terms of what's happening with the product roadmap. But one of the most unique things that I think that customer success can do is identify advocates. And, back to that chart that I showed at the beginning of this call with those concentric circles where advocacy is at the very top. Nothing sells your product better than customer to customer, peer to peer. And your customer success folks are going to build relationships at a personal level with your customers, help turn them into advocates who are then going to be very willing to talk about you in the marketplace. And we know that, today's buyer keep staying anonymous for a very long time, and they're talking to one another about what they're looking at before they ever make themselves known to us as sales and marketing people. So that whole advocacy conversation, after we earn the right to get them to best practice, get them to upsell, is a really critical component.
Tracy, do you have an opinion? I mean, many of the folks that are listening are product companies, right? Many in technology and obviously varying degrees of software. But there's also the tech-enabled services or just services companies. I think about, our business, we're a consulting company, right? And there's many companies out there saying, well, I don't have a natural, what would be recurring revenue. It's a little more project-based, kind of job-based. Do you have an opinion or do you have a view for those thinking about customer success and marketing that aren't in product companies?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'm a purchaser myself of many services, right? I'm a graphic design firm, I have a PR agency, and so on. And to me, it's all about account management. Is that services company, regardless of whether it's the lawn service for my garden or my PR agency for my software company, do I have a connection with someone in that firm that is managing my account, that has my best interest in mind, that is communicating with me about the results that they've accomplished? And, it goes two ways. I have to support them too. Like one of the things I say to my PR agency all the time is, their ability to generate press for us is only as good as our ability to feed them interesting news. So it really has to be a partnership. But the best services organizations are always demonstrating to me that they have my business needs in mind, that they are up on what we're doing, that they care about the success of my team. And that tends, I think, to work very much in our favor. And then we go from project to project to project, and it almost is recurring revenue, even though the contract might not be worded that way. That's very helpful. So I guess my last question then in this segment, have you leveraged or have you seen people leverage customer success in marketing campaigns? Leveraging customer success in marketing campaigns, how do you mean exactly?
So almost like what role should customer success play in a marketing campaign? You had talked about community, you talked about advocacy. So how do you think about it that way?
So the way I think about customer success's role in marketing campaigns is, just like marketing works with sales and our SDR team when we are rolling out any particular campaign, we need to be briefing our customer success folks on the message, on the tools, on the content, on whatever the thing might be. Like, for example, we did a multi-city roadshow a year ago where we were bringing together customers and prospects. We had an analyst. It was a half-day event. It was sort of a classic play for a marketing team to do. And our customer success folks were communicating, actively promoting that event to their customers over their regular communication, whether it was weekly call with that account. They would send the invitation. They would make sure they were signed up to go. They made sure that they got special attention when we were there. For instance, we had a VIP program where top accounts, when they showed up at the event in Boston or Chicago, our front desk knew who they were and radioed back to the account manager that was waiting in the ballroom, and then they'd greet them. So that kind of coordination is really critical. And they're ambassadors. Your customer success people are that. They're right on that front line. So you really need to arm them. Marketing needs to arm them with tools and techniques and messages and content and everything you would normally do with your sales folks.
Wonderful. Well, that was a great segment. So let's take another break. Melissa's going to share with you another great resource to help you make your number.
Yes, Matt, I know a lot of people out there are interested in the topic of customer success. So if you want to understand what is required in terms of the right level of marketing interlock for your customer success program, consider enlisting our team of experts to help you out with an interactive workshop. To get a feel for what's covered in these workshops, go to sbi.tips/2018 workbook.
All right, so this is our last segment with Tracy, demonstrating how marketing supports customer success. So we're going to jump back into the questions. So Tracy, how does marketing help support the nurture and the content needs of the customer success team? Like, is there a cadence, is there a recommendation that customer success has a certain amount of content and they should be pushing that out? How do you think about that?
That's such a great question. It's something that I've been grappling with, in fact, this year. When we did our journey mapping, we literally audited all of the content that happens to a customer that is shared with a customer from the minute they sign their contract. So that was everything, Matt, from a welcome email to the people that are hooking up the product that we call our onboarding team.
Yep.
What's the look and feel of that? What happens in the knowledge center that a customer logs into to look up tips and tricks and so on. And, we scrubbed through that, and I alluded earlier that we found some holes. We found some holes that frankly horrified me as a marketer, where just the brand voice, right? Like, how friendly were we? What kind of jargon did we use? All of that really needs to be looked at by marketing. And, the folks in our teams in onboarding and customer success were very open to have marketing's input. They were kind of left on their own. They're not marketers, right? So they're not kind of thinking about the polish, I guess I would say, that is really expected by the buyer. So that's one thing, just kind of every little touch point. Another touch point is really related to adoption. So in our particular case, one of the products we sell is for sellers, for individual quota-carrying sales reps.
Right.
And adoption of that product typically happens in a spike at the very beginning of the sale, and then it might wane over time. They forget to log in and so on, right? So one of the things we decided to do was add a tips and tricks, to use kind of a corny word, nurture campaign. And we're doing it through the customer success folks, but marketing wrote the content, working with our training guys, which is like a 9-touch, here's how to do this kind of feature. For example, set up a watch list, things like that. And it's early days. We're piloting it with 25 of our biggest accounts where we have thousands of users, to see if that is going to help our customer success guys continue to establish more value, be front and center, showing the customer that they really care about their success and so on.
Right. So I love the integration in your journey loop and the awareness of, okay, I've got some gaps. And it's interesting because they're information gaps. I mean, you think in this world that we live in, right? I mean, this thing right here, holding my phone in my hands, for those that are just listening and not watching, we're in this war for attention. And this war for attention wraps around nicely into emotion, not necessarily logic, as a key driver of buyer behavior. So, Tracy, on that topic around emotion, have you, in the journey studying and in the content you're producing, have you guys made a move, or you recommend making this move to the content that you send out to personas being much more emotionally driven versus, feeds and speeds and features and benefits relative to what it is I've purchased from you? Can you talk a little bit about that?
So you just hit on a passion topic of mine, which is the role of emotion in business-to-business interaction. And, historically, we are all so analytically driven about our businesses that we kind of think that emotion is something that happens in your personal life and not in your business life, right? And,
totally.
And there's some really interesting studies that have come out about the role of emotion in executive decision-making in particular. And I saw this stat. It was from Forrester again, because they did a really interesting study using a lot of neuroscience techniques that said that as much as 82% of an executive's decision is completely emotionally driven. Now, they think they're doing it very, very logically. They think they're making a very analytical, logical decision, but it's completely driven by emotion. And that emotion is based on their memory and their perception of the brand and so on. And so marketing has a big role to play in establishing empathy and trust with their buyer, and then having that empathy come through in all of your communications. And it's a very important thing to look at. And it's such a squishy topic, Matt, that I think most of us business people are very uncomfortable talking about it, because, like, how do you put your arms around how a product makes you feel, right? So it's an early conversation that I think us marketers need to bring to the table with our instincts and the more artsy side of ourselves.
Yep.
And think about, how we're establishing trust with the buyer, how we are communicating our brand voice. That's both visual, that's both verbal, it's sound, it's kind of the whole experience needs to be something where we're really showing that buyer that we understand their point of view.
So you and I could not be more aligned on this. I remember probably over 20 years ago reading a book, I think it was called The Psychology of Persuasion by Kevin Hogan, old school book. And he talked about people buying on emotion and justify with logic. And that's been reproduced many, many times, but that whole concept. And I say that because in the work that I do with CEOs and senior executives, everybody gets excited, especially in product companies, about business outcomes, what their product does, saves you X, lets you see Y, firewall Z, and so it goes and so it goes. But the 7 deadly emotions when you're talking to a business buyer, right? Do I feel threatened? Am I skeptical, right? Am I fearful, right? Am I suspicious of your intentions? Am I naive because I don't understand what you do? If you don't understand the emotional narrative as a seller, it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to be behind those who do, right? And I love your thought about leaving your emotions at home when you go to work. That's not what happens. It's not like you have a backpack that you just take the logic backpack to work. You also take the emotional backpack, it comes too, and it always goes in front of logic. So I am with you, and for our listeners, I would tell you emotion more than logic is what drives decision-making process from new logo acquisition to retention and renewal. So,
and especially in advocacy, Matt, right?
Yeah.
Like you think about the products that you are passionate about, and whether it's in your personal life or your professional life, and you will rant and rave about how great something is and how wonderful your experience is, and you can feel it in your body.
Yeah.
How excited you are about it, and you want your friends to know about it, and that is an emotion that we can interject into our customers' experience, and that turns into revenue, right? Which is what we ultimately want.
One more point. You made me think about this yesterday. Melissa and I and a few other folks at SBI, we hosted a team at the studio. So we had a private equity firm, a couple of their deal partners, and an entire executive team, so 12 folks. And we did a very immersive working session. And while the content, we were talking about structure and org design and hunter-farmer, yes, but what sort of broke through on both sides was the emotional narrative. The person who was leading sales came in very skeptical. He thought it was going to be a bunch of high-level academic nonsense. The CMO was wondering if we knew enough about their business, so he was suspicious. It had literally 20% to do with the IP and 80% to do with how my team made them feel, for what we knew to how we spoke, et cetera. And so we try to eat our own dog food, and whenever we have people come through, that's one of the things we ask them. And so your comment on that, your commentary is spot on. So I agree with you.
There must have been a moment in that experience yesterday where you could feel the emotion in the room flip, from kind of negative posture to a leaning in posture.
Oh, completely. And I think you get to a point when you get to doing what you've done as long as you have, or what I've done, where you name that emotion and you just have the conversation, right? And there's a level of authenticity that says, hey, listen, I get it, right? If I'm in your shoes, I understand. And I just hired an outside consultant a couple weeks ago, so I eat our own dog food, and I had a set of emotions walking into my meeting with my partners with him, and it is amazing how you have to sort of manage your own emotional narrative. So that was very helpful. So last question, and I want to talk a little bit about your book and I guess key learnings. If you had 3 or 4 maybe hypotheses around customer success and the integrated marketing motion when you started on the journey, and then what you then learned coming out of it, could you share those with the audience from your vantage point?
So, as I've been studying this topic and I really think customer obsession is the next great revenue opportunity.
I love that.
I think we pay a lot of lip service to making our customers happy. And, sales and marketing has an imperative to work together more closely than ever, driven by the changes in the buyer that we've already discussed, right? The buyer stays anonymous much longer. They really don't want to talk to sales until they're almost ready to buy. And, that disenfranchisement of the seller means that marketing needs to be much more active. And Forrester will say that, sales and marketing needs to meet the buyer where they want to buy, not the way that we want to sell.
Sure.
So we really need to reorient ourselves, all the way around that. So key learnings for me are really figuring out, where does that buyer want to buy? Where do they show up in the market, right? What do they read? Who do they listen to? Where do they go? And so on, right? It's kind of classical marketing 101, but it's even harder to figure out now than ever before. So there's lots of listening that we need to be doing in the market, and there's lots of ways to do that. We need our sellers to be, and our marketers to really act as one. So it's very seamless from the buyer's perspective. They're not really sure. It doesn't really matter who they're talking to. Right. There's just one voice and there's one experience. And that we need to introduce earlier in the conversation with the buyer what's going to happen once they buy, right? So show them that vision of how they're going to get to best practice and how you're going to make them successful, how you're going to make them a hero to tap into that emotion, right? It's risky. And especially if you're dealing with, 6-7 figure deals like we do on occasion. That's a very complex sale and it's a risky purchase. So it's very important for us to show that buying team of multiple personas, how they're going to win together, and being able to navigate that complexity is something that marketing can really help the organization do.
I'll tell you, as we wrap up the show together, and I appreciate it, a big thing I took from today, one of them was this concept of customer obsession. So for those of you that are listening and watching the show, Tracy, the clarity with which Tracy spoke about this integrated journey and what customer success does and how they're informing the front of the house marketing and sales relative to how people are feeling, both emotionally, but also feeds and speeds, yes, but significant input that they can have relative to that customer journey and customer success's role. So Tracy, I love customer obsession, so I'm going to steal that, but quote you every single time, I promise. But I just want to really thank you. Today was a great demonstration, so I appreciate you contributing to the body of knowledge in this area. So on behalf of myself and the firm and our listeners, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you, Matt, and to everyone at SBI. I appreciate the invitation.
Awesome. So Melissa, before we wrap, I think you have a final item that you want to share with our audience.
Yes, thank you again, Tracy. And it wasn't frightening at all, so thank you for that. To our audience, if you are not part of the SBI community just yet, we invite you to be a part of this prestigious community. You can do that by going to salesbenchmarkindex.com/register. There you can select topics of interest to you and the content you want to receive and when you want to receive it. That's all I got, Matt.
Wonderful. Well, folks, that's it for today. So big thanks to Tracy and taking time out of her busy schedule to spend with us. So as always, until next time, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on the studio, SBI's Executive Briefing Center, our team, or to schedule a workshop, please visit salesbenchmarkindex.com.